I'm Speech Thomas from the hip-hop crew Arrested Development. On the new VPM podcast, Track Change, I take you behind the walls of Richmond City Jail, where I help 4 men record an album and hear how they're trying to break free from a cycle of addiction and incarceration.
Been so long since I've been free.
Subscribe to Track Change in your podcast app.
Welcome to RVA's Got Issues, a podcast about politics and public affairs in and around Richmond, Virginia. Each episode will bring you stories about what's happening here in RVA. We'll break down complicated events and ideas so you can understand what's happening in your community and why it matters. I'm your host, Rich Marr. I teach students about Virginia politics at Randolph-Macon College just north of the city. You may have seen or heard me on the local news, and now I'm excited to host this new podcast from VPM. We'll bring you deep dive interviews on the biggest stories in the news, and you'll hear from people who are coming up with innovative ways to improve their communities. From Richmond, Chesterfield, Hanover, Henrico, and more, we'll tell you what's happening, what's next, and what you can do about it.
The first thing that came to mind for me was improving pedestrian safety.
Do something about people without houses. More protected bike lanes with a barrier. That way there's no way a car can kind of crash into you.
We'll talk to Richmond City Council President Kristen Nye about why this is coming to Richmond, how it works, and whether it's here to stay. Also, RVA's got questions about what to do with guns, like literally. A listener has a crate full of guns and wants to know, how do I get rid of these? Finally, RVA's got answers about spaghetti. For our community spotlight, we'll talk to an activist and mom who fights cystic fibrosis by reaching people's hearts and stomachs. All that and more coming up on RVA's Got Issues. Today, RVA's got issues with participatory budgeting. Kristen Nye is a 2-term member of the Richmond City Council, representing the 4th District, and currently president of the council. Welcome, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
So you were one of the patrons of a resolution in 2019 that established this new process in Richmond called participatory budgeting. We might call it PB for short.
Let's call it PB.
It's a mouthful. So for our listeners who've never heard of this, it's a process that lets citizens directly decide how to specifically spend a portion of the city's budget. So this idea comes from Brazil almost 40 years ago. It's come to Charlottesville in Virginia recently, and now to Richmond. So Kristen, what made you think this would be a good fit for Richmond?
So we talk to constituents every day, right? And we're always hearing about little things they want. And I think sometimes the little things get lost in the mix. And participatory budgeting, or we'll call it PB, I think helps get folks involved into those little projects that probably have big meaning for residents. And it lets them go through a process, a community process, and then actually vote on the project to see what will be installed in their community. So with the PB process, it's going to give them more that feeling of, oh, I voted on this and my project rose to the top, or at least is in the top 3. And so I feel like I have directly influenced my tax dollars in my community.
So how does an idea like this come to Richmond?
So I have to give credit to my colleague, Andreas Addison, council member in the 1st District. He brought the idea up, and to me, it was a no-brainer. It just seemed like a really cool way to allot a relatively small amount of money when you're talking about a budget the size of ours. $3 million in a $1 billion budget is really nothing. So to set aside this little bit of money to give our residents a direct voice in the process.
I mean, you're getting at this idea that people don't really understand that much how the budget process works, how these decisions are made. They might feel it's a little unfair. And this process, this participatory budgeting process, is different from the normal budgeting process. Without getting too deep into the weeds, like how does the budget process work normally?
So the way it works in Richmond, and we're a strong mayor format, so it's a little different than other localities, but the way it works is the mayor pulls together a budget. The budget comes in front of city council. So then we put in amendments, we try and make some tweaks to the budget, and then per state code, we have to have it approved by May 30th.
But so this PB process, it's separate from this budget process the way you just laid out, right? And so how does that work? Citizens are going to make decisions on their own?
What we've done is we've set aside money. So that's the most important thing. That is step one. You need the money that the people can talk about allocating. So it's $3 million. We're breaking it down to $200,000 per district. And then that leaves an additional $1.2 million. And that will be allocated towards the end as an extra bonus, if you will, to underserved communities. And that will be determined by several factors that the steering commission has laid out and will be decided separately from council's involvement.
So each district will have a steering committee or a commission that will decide how to spend their designated money. And then there'll be a process for everybody to come together to spend this bigger chunk of money for undeserved communities. That sound right?
Yes.
And so this process is going to take some time over the next month, year, 5 years. Like how long of a time frame are we talking
So
about?
I think our crunch time is really this summer. They're going to be laying the groundwork. Fall we're in the season of the outreach, and then hopefully get to decisioning towards the winter, spring timeframe of 2025, and then decisions by this time next year of what the projects are going to look like.
Part of this is actually kind of educating people on how the budget process works, right? It's you have to kind of take a little bit of a long view. You have to think about this longer timing. Do you feel like this will serve a kind of educational purpose as well?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges there is too is trying to get people to hone in on what sort of projects make sense for this type of money. This is not ongoing money. This is not money that will be there year after year. This is one-time funding. So, looking at, are there traffic safety type of improvements that folks are wanting in the community? Are there park types of improvements, playgrounds, a pocket park, things as simple as benches, art installations, those types of things. So I think it'll be really interesting to see as this process evolves, what do people actually want?
We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, when can you vote on ideas? Also, will this experiment last, or is it just a one-time policy blip? All that and more on RVA's Got Issues.
There is so much happening in the news every single day. Keep up with it all by subscribing to the VPM Daily Newscast. It's a roundup of Central Virginia's top stories in less than 10 minutes from the VPM News team. The VPM Daily Newscast is available on NPR One or wherever you get your podcasts.
We're back. This is RVA's Got Issues, and we're talking about participatory budgeting with Richmond City Council President Kristen Nye. So, Kristen, our listeners might hear participatory budgeting and think, great, we get to decide everything forever, yay. But this seems a little bit more like a kind of pilot project, right, where you're taking a little bit of the budget, still a sizable chunk of money, $3 million, but still, compared to, as you've said, the big size of the Richmond City budget, it is a small percentage of it. So what do you tell a constituent or maybe one of our listeners who might say, oh, big deal, right? This is just too small. This isn't going to make a difference.
I would just say, try it. You have nothing to lose, maybe a little bit of your time. I really think this is a way for people to directly see the fruits of their labor. And we're trying to call it the people's budget. It really is, if people can get in there, roll up their sleeves a little bit, listen to what their neighbors have to say, and then bring their ideas forward. Bring it up at a meeting, get it on the list, have other people talk about it. Sometimes you don't even know what you would want until you hear somebody else mention it.
Do you see this as bleeding back into the regular budgeting process? Like, could some of these ideas not only affect this particular participatory budgeting process, but maybe find their way back into the normal budgeting process?
I think so. I think the more input we can get from folks in a organized fashion, I think the more it could really influence what we're trying to advocate for as we go through the budget process. Because in public service, I think you tend to get a lot of folks who come to your meetings all the time. A lot of the same folks call our office. And we are happy to hear from everybody all the time. But it's great to have a diverse group of voices. And I think this PB process could help pull out some of those voices that we don't hear from all the time.
Sometimes it can be hard in a typical voting process, or even just going to city council, to get your time to speak to your council member. You have to know how to talk to them too, and that's can be such a barrier for so many people. And so this is a really very, very grassroots way to get everyone's voice heard.
Coming up with the ideas ourselves and voting them ourselves, the sort of bottom-up approach to funding our city and to politics in general, I feel like that, if nothing else, that mental shift could go a long way in improving the way our city operates and cities across the country do.
Speaking of kind of new voices, not just from below, but from above, right? This is an election year. We will have a new mayor next year. We'll have many new council members, including in the 4th district, right? Because you will not be running again. This is your last term. What's the future of participatory budgeting? Will the people's budget survive that election? Do you think that this is going to go on, or is this something that you and Andreas Addison have put in place and that might not have legs after this?
I hope not. I hope that getting the process launched really for real right now. And even though I'm leaving at the end of December, we'll be mid-process then. I will certainly be keeping an eye on it as a resident because I am curious to see where it goes. And the idea is to start at $3 million. It's actually a 2-year process. So you take 1 year and that's your outreach year. The second year is your implementation year, and then you start the cycle again. So there's a bucket of money every 2 years, and the idea is to increase it every 2 years. I do think there is a spirit of understanding the importance of this process. We've hired some folks on staff to help with the outreach because it can't be done with the limited resources that we have. And one of the things is really trying to reach out to parts of the community that usually don't participate. They're thinking, how do I even have time to go to a community meeting to weigh in on something like this? So we're looking at things from a couple different angles and trying to make sure that we touch all parts of the community and get folks involved and kind of meet them where they are.
And sometimes that's how it works in public budgeting, right? It's the initial adding to the budget that's the hard part, but once it's there, it's a lot easier to keep it going. Does that sound right?
Absolutely. And I think once the public sees how much input they can have on it, I think they will be asking for it.
So if the public is going to be interested in participatory budgeting, how do they get involved?
Right now, we're doing some limited outreach that's laying the groundwork about what this process is going to be to get people to start thinking about it. Then it's going to be direct outreach into, all right, let's start thinking about actual projects you would like to see in your district. This is the amount of money. And then you go into this sort of drill down. Okay, these were the top 10 lists of projects. People are going to vote on it. You can vote if you're 14 years or older. So it's a very intentional process. Like I said, we've hired some staff who are working through the details, and all of that will be made public and unveiled as the time comes up.
Kristen Nye is president of the Richmond City Council. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
If you want to learn more about participatory budgeting in Richmond, go to rvapb.org. On each episode of RVA's Got Issues, you'll hear from a fellow listener who has a burning question about local government, politics, or their community. For this episode, RVA's got questions about how to get rid of a gun. Our producer, Amber, is back to help us out with this week's question. Hi, Amber.
Hi, Rich. Unique question. So the question reads, I have a crate of firearms that I inherited from my father. I'm not much of a gun person, and I'm trying to get rid of them. And there just simply isn't a way to do that. Here's the note that's a bit unique. I don't even have the combination to the lock to get into the cabinet. I forgot it years back. So that adds an extra layer to this problem.
Right, the mystery box of guns.
Right.
So maybe that's why this person is anonymous. Maybe they don't want their neighbors to know they have this mystery box.
Yeah, let's see what we can help them out with.
Yes. So over 40% of American households own a gun or have a gun in the house, but plenty of people are like this listener. They might be uncomfortable with them or at least unsure how to handle them. And it seems like this listener can't even get to them. They say it's a crate or cabinet. It's possibly a gun safe. Gun safes are good. That's how you store firearms safely, keep them away from kids and things like that. It's not a bad idea to have guns locked away. But whatever this box is, it seems like this listener has two problems, right? How to get this box open and then how to dispose of what's inside the box. So the box itself, the crate, they probably should open it first. And to do that, I suspect they need a locksmith. And if they're lucky, one who specializes in safe cracking, which sounds like the coolest job ever.
It really does.
Like a heist movie or something?
Yeah, when you have like the thing and you like listening to the clicks.
Yes. So don't try that at home, I guess. But there are a couple of locksmiths in Richmond who say they can open up any safe you have. So I would suggest calling one of those folks first. And then once you get this crate open, the other problem is then how to get rid of the guns. If you find a gun, I mean, to me, this seems like the first person you might want to call a police officer. Does that sound right to you, Amber?
Well, it's kind of like if you have like deer in your yard and you're like, who do I really call for this? So It's like, do I call the police for this? Do I call emergency, non-emergency?
If you're being robbed, you're supposed to call the police, but just finding a gun. But it turns out that the police actually do this, right? A lot of times they take guns off the hands of convicted criminals, someone who has been ordered by the court to hand in a gun, but they can do it for anybody. So every police department has a non-emergency number that you can find online or in a phone book and call. You can call the Virginia State Police. They have an office here in Glen Allen, and you can call them and they will come pick it up. It's legal. It's free. They don't give you a penalty. They don't give you a fee. They're just happy to take it off your hands. Now, if you're uncomfortable with having police come to your house, you can bring the guns to them. I don't know how you might walk into a police station with guns in your hand. Maybe...
Please call first.
Yes, I think that's a good idea. Maybe leave them in the car, leave them, make sure they're unloaded, call first, go into the police department, tell them that you're there. They will come to your car, they'll take them off your hands, and they're happy to do it. So the bottom line for this anonymous listener with the mystery box of guns, check with the local police, see if they'll just take this box off your hands. If not, then get a locksmith to open it up, and then the police will be happy to take them off your hands. Now, it's unlikely anybody has this same question, Amber, but what if they have a different question?
If you have a different question or anything else that's burning a hole in your head, email us at rvasgotissues@vpm.org.
Thanks, Amber.
Thanks, Rich.
Finally, RVA's got ways to make things better with, among other things, spaghetti. For this episode's Community Spotlight, we are excited to have with us Beth Saladino, a community activist who raises funds and awareness for the battle against cystic fibrosis. Beth, welcome.
Thank you, Rich. I'm excited to be here.
You are with the Virginia chapter of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, but you got into this work because of your daughter, Lucy.
That's exactly right. Lucy was diagnosed when she was 6 months old with cystic fibrosis. We did our very first Great Strides walk 3 weeks after that.
Wow, so just threw yourself right into it.
That became our new normal. We were like, all right, that's our jumping off point.
And so tell us a little bit about Lucy. What was Lucy like?
She was awesome sauce. She loved sushi, loved fresh food, loved Top Chef, loved Project Runway, got tanner than you can imagine just by hanging out in the sun a little bit, played soccer. My husband coached her team from second grade until the girls actually graduated. Lucy passed when they were freshmen in high school, but he continued on until the girls all graduated from high school. Yeah, and she was sassy, probably would be an activist herself.
That's great. And so tell us a little bit then about cystic fibrosis. So what is this?
It's a recessive genetic disease. So both the man and the woman have to pass on the defect. So my husband and I had a 1 in 4 chance of having a child with CF, 1 in 4 with no defects at all, and then 2 in 4 of carrying the defect. We didn't know. We had no idea. Lucy was normal birth weight, but was not gaining weight and was labeled failure to thrive. And we were trying different formulas and things like that. And then lo and behold, our pediatrician, wonderful guy, asked me one day if she tasted salty. And I said, yeah, just like a little potato chip. And he said, I think she has cystic fibrosis. So it's a defect, and forgive me because I was a fashion major, so not big science, here.
That's okay. No, I'm with you.
The simplified version of it is it's a transportation of chloride out of your cells. So it affects the whole body, but really hits hard in the lungs and the pancreas. And we all have mucus in our lungs, but it's usually real thin and slippery, and you swallow a bunch of it. You just don't know that. But for people with CF, it's thick and sticky. It's like a cross between hot glue and honey. Yeah. In your lungs, it's warm and moist, and it's just a wonderful place for infection and bacteria to breed. So it becomes a vicious cycle. But things are different. Things are changing.
So how are they changing? There's some new treatments?
Yeah. In 1955, that was the year that the foundation was formed by parents, just like myself. 3 sets of parents who wanted better treatment for their children. At that time, the life expectancy was somewhere around school age, elementary school, and that just wasn't acceptable. So they went out looking for new treatments and better care. And now, I'm so happy to say, the life expectancy is over 56 years of age for a child born today. And a lot of that has to do with the last 4 big drugs that we've brought to market or brought to our community called modulators. And they actually correct the defect. They don't cure it permanently, but they correct it. We had adults start on it and instantaneously, within a month, saw vast improvement in pulmonary function, which is a biggie, and weight gain, which is a biggie. And now it's available for about 93% of our population, which is also a huge platform step up too.
Right. And so there's not a lot of federal funding for this disease. Around 40,000 people in the U.S. have it?
Exactly. Yep. About 40,000.
Is there a concern that there's a sense that a lack of urgency? We've got the treatments. We fixed it now. We don't have to do anything about this anymore?
Our sense at the foundation is, yes, we have a sense of accomplishment, but that urgency cannot go away because, and as a CF mom myself, I feel it. And when I see the big wigs at CF Foundation, I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's pick up the pace. And they are working incredibly fast, but the clock is ticking for someone who doesn't have a modulator or a viable treatment.
So let's go back to some of the things that you do. You mentioned the Great Strides Walk. What is that about?
Yeah.
A walk to raise money for the foundation?
It's a fundraiser. It is our community-based, grassroots-based. It's my favorite event that we do. It's really just very family-centric. We do a small walk, nothing strenuous, but we have fun things for the kids to do. We'll do a medical update. We'll recognize people.
And that's not the only thing you do, right? You came up with a fairly unique way to raise money.
Yeah, actually, I can't take credit for it, Rich. It was Lucy. We were raising money for Great Strides as a family team and doing okay, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, not bad.
That's good.
And she really wanted to step up our game. And she said, I have an idea. My husband and I were like, okay, good, great. She said, I want to do an all-night dance marathon. And she was a freshman in high school at Godwin High School. We thought, that's horrible. I can't think of anything worse than hanging out with teenagers overnight.
Yeah.
And my husband had been a chef for many years, and we were like, let's do food. And so we came up with this spaghetti dinner. Lucy was there for the first two. We are going on our 16th year. It'll be in November. We used to do it in the spring right before Great Strides, but COVID reset us. And so now we do it Lucy's birthday weekend. And it has grown exponentially. Last year, we served about 380 dinners. We do take out. My husband makes all the sauces. We roll.
Really?
Yeah.
For 380 people?
For 380 people. Yeah, we have a great group of volunteers that help us store things in the refrigerators. They come over and they make meatballs with us. The dessert ladies, the dessert table is something to see in person. And last year we raised about $35,000.
That's terrific. So when's the next dinner? You said it's the fall?
Fall, November 2nd at Deep Run Community Center.
Right. And then how can people get involved in other ways?
The Virginia chapter, we do a ton of events all through the year. We do 6 walks across the state. So we walk all through April and May. Then in June, we have a paddling event that's going to be on the James River. We're launching out of Osborne Park. It's 5 miles, just leisurely paddle. It's not a race. We also have our Richmond Brewers Ball, which is really quite a program. We recruit young professionals or they're nominated for us. We do ask them to raise a little bit of money, and then we throw them a huge party this year at the Science Museum with local breweries and restaurants and a small auction and dancing, and it's a great night.
Lucy's been gone now about 15 years?
Yeah.
So how do you find the strength to keep doing this work? What keeps you going?
I think it's 2 things. I definitely think of those first parents that started the foundation and the anxiety they must have felt and uncertainty of knowing the future for their children and just what it took for them to get it off the ground. And now it's just an amazing organization. And then Lucy, I get to talk about her and get to see her peers who are thriving. It's kind of like daily therapy for me to be able to talk about the progress. And we are making progress. And that is what keeps me incredibly hopeful. We call it hope in action.
Beth Saladino is Associate Executive Director of the Virginia chapter of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and she is forever Lucy's mom. Thanks so much, Beth.
Thank you, Rich.
That's our show. Thanks to our guests, Krista Nye and Beth Saladino. RVA's got issues, but we need you to tell us what those issues are. Submit a question or tell us about something exciting going on in your community at our website, rvasgotissues.vpm.org. Join us next time when RVA's Got Issues with, well, if you want to know, subscribe to us wherever you download podcasts. While you're at it, tell a friend about us, share a social media post, or even leave a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Let's get everyone in RVA listening. RVA's Got Issues is produced by Max Wasserman and Amber Coles and edited by Steve Lack. Our theme music was composed by Alexander Hitchens. Meg Lindholm is our executive producer. Steve Humble is VPM's Chief Content Officer. I'm your host, Rich Marr. Thanks for listening.
VPM.